You are listening to the Revolutionary Love and Resilience podcast. I'm Shelby Leigh, and I am so honored to be here with you today. This podcast bridges the personal and professional, creating space for experts in the wellness and well-being field to be both vulnerable and share their deep wisdom from their years of experience. This podcast weaves trauma awareness, inclusivity, and inspiration for every single person to be able to heal, grow, and become who they want to be, to step into their full authenticity and expand their capacity to claim their best lives as they journey through challenges towards revolutionary love and resilience. I am really excited to introduce all of you today to my dear friend, Ellen Clark from Australia. You will love how she talks. I sure do. She's a dear friend and a colleague, and we're going to do something a little bit different today than we are in the rest of the episodes. I'm going to actually hand the keys over to Ellen to allow her to interview me, because I'm a strong believer that if I'm not willing to do what I'm asking others to do, meaning the other people I'm interviewing from here on forward in the interview process and the podcast, that I'd be out of integrity with what I practice and preach. So I really feel it's important to be vulnerable and transparent and share my story with you and what revolutionary love and resilience means to me before I can really ask anyone else to step into doing that for me as an interviewer. So here you go. I would love to introduce you all to Ellen.
Hi, and thank you for welcoming me on your podcast. And I'm going to turn around and welcome you back to your own podcast. And I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more of your story that you're going to share with us, and finding out what revolutionary love and resilience is for you and how you came across it, how you ended up at this place. So to start with, really deeply, warmly welcome to your own podcast.
Thank you.
I would love to start by asking you, what inspired revolutionary love and resilience for you? If you could just share a little bit about that.
I feel like the more healing I do in my own world, and then also the more I'm working with folks who are healing their own trauma, revolutionary love and resilience is something that comes up in my heart all of the time, where I'm constantly feeling this drive towards wanting more people in the world to have this thing that I keep getting to know, between the way I'm working with myself, the way that I'm working with others. It comes out of not ever really understanding in my body, my heart, and my mind, what love felt like, what it actually was. And the more I come into my own sense of embodiment and resilience and presence, I'm tapping into something that I think we would call love. In fact, revolutionary love, because there's a way that I used to be really addicted to, like fairy tale romance, love and lust. And I thought that that's what love was. I thought that getting approval from others evoked this sense of what I thought was love in my system. And since I've been kind of working to find actually something that lives inside myself instead of something that lives outside of me, how I've experienced revolutionary love is a fierce ability and willingness to stay with myself no matter what emotion comes up, no matter if it feels pleasant, unpleasant, or neither, and an embracing of every single thing is here and acknowledging that what I am feeling matters, that it's important, that it makes sense, and an ability to feel with myself. These are things that weren't modeled to me, that I have had modeled to me through mostly somatic psychotherapy, but other many beautiful experiences. And so I'm just really passionate about helping people understand what revolutionary love means for them, because it's not going to be what it means for me. But I think every single person can tap into some sense of revolutionary love inside themselves. And then from that place comes resilience. You know, the more I have been able to fiercely stay with myself through every single experience, I have grown what I would call my window of tolerance, my ability to be in a state of presence instead of in a state of reactivity. It's that embracing experience where I can be with anything without it overwhelming me or collapsing me, you know, making me shoot down into a state of helplessness or depression or immense fatigue, or bouncing up into a lot of intensity and anxiety and activation. So the resilience is like living between those places, and it grows and grows and grows the more there is a connection to revolutionary love. And because of that experience, watching it in myself, guiding others to truly be able to connect with that, I've just gotten so excited about how others are doing that in the world too. And I'm also really interested in people's paths towards being wellness providers and well-being practitioners, because most of us don't find this path unless we have had some suffering along the way or some trauma. And it just touches my heart to get to hear those people's stories too. So that's what inspired this.
Yeah, I love how it was sort of a journey from seeking outside for kind of like a fairy tale romance to a really kind of grounded internal state of being, which I think is interesting. Sort of love is something that we often go out and look for, to coming back to actually it's more of a way to be, a way to live, a sort of a way to drop in and ground and interact with life. And from that state of being comes this really clear sense of resilience and ability to be with more as we stay in this state of being. And I think that's really, really inspiring to hear more about.
Thank you. It has been such a journey, and it inspires me every day to keep waking up and to keep being of service, because it's so much better than what I knew before. I think often about how I was one of those people, and I'm of the generation where this is actually more common than I would like to hear. But like, I wasn't told I love you from a parent until my mid to late 20s. And so for me, words of affirmation and words of affection are really important to me. And because that wasn't something that was present for me, nothing landed, nothing registered, that I had to figure out how to get that in other places. And so I'm just so excited to finally have landed in a place where it's like, nope, you cannot find that anywhere outside of yourself. But I looked in a lot of places that went really in a not so great direction, in incredibly kind of overwhelming, intense experiences. And so it's so beautiful to finally get what I heard so many times, that you can't find it outside of yourself, but to really feel that, it's such a gift.
Lovely. I love that you're finding it and that it's real. And because I used to read that in a lot of self-help books around, you can only find it inside of yourself. And I was like, whatever. I hated hearing that because I hadn't found it inside of myself. And I was like, this sounds like nice for them, but not for me. So I'm glad to know that it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was my curse forever, that I could help others get there, that everybody else could get there. I was reading about it in books, but it just wasn't for me in this lifetime. And there were some major missing pieces in those books. And I also just want to say, it's not that we cultivate this internal felt sense of love on our own. And that's the tricky part that I think gets lost, is that we find it through our circles of support, through the wise people in our lives who are reflecting to us in a grounded and present way, you know, through our mentors, through our therapists, our coaches, etc. we have to do it through co-regulation, many of us. And so that doesn't mean just going off and finding love inside. We learn about it through resonant somatic reflection and all sorts of ways from other people. We can't do this alone.
Yeah, lovely. Is there anything else that you want to share about what revolutionary love is to you, what it means to you, and what it has meant to you in your life?
Well, what just came, if I'm really honest, is it kind of means a really big F you to the people that were causing me harm in my life when I was little. There was more than one, and it was really detrimental to my development. And this standing in my power, thriving with health, full of love, is like, a big F you to those people that were desperately trying to teach me that I would never be able to amount to anything.
So out of that big FU is coming this kind of really amazing sense of resilience.
Yeah, exactly. Phoenix rising from the ashes. You need some resilience for that.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that it's kind of a byproduct of finding this revolutionary love. Like, it's interesting to me that resilience is, it's kind of a side effect more than something that you would go after on its own. Like, if you connect really deeply with revolutionary love in your life, in yourself, in your body, in your experience, then naturally you become more resilient.
Yep, I agree. There are, of course, as you know, you're also a trauma trained, amazing practitioner, and we know about resourcing and all sorts of things that can increase resilience. However, I think it's both ways. I think there's a byproduct of cultivating resilience. There's more space to connect with revolutionary love. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Interesting pictures of a river kind of running both ways in my head, and it's very Escher-esque. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it looks good.
Perfect. I've thoroughly confused you.
I'm sort of confused on a logical level, but on an emotional felt sense level, it makes a lot of sense. Good. I'm wondering, now that we're all thoroughly confused, not really, if you're willing, would you share with us a story from your life that was really hard or challenging, a time that you wish you had access to revolutionary love and resilience?
I'll share two, and I'll kind of go backwards in time. I'll start with something that happened recently, and then kind of touch back on some things that happened long ago that probably really ignited the inspiration for what I'm doing today. This weekend was the anniversary of my father's passing. He committed suicide 3 years ago. And when he took his own life, I was just impacted on so many levels. It knocked the wind out of me for at least a year, of like just severe grief and bewilderment. And it connected to everything, all the abandonments that had happened before by him, over many years of him in his suffering, not able to be a father in the way that I needed. He had become addicted to drugs and could never quite get on his feet and had no idea how to ask me how I was or who I was. And he was really suffering, and we didn't have a good relationship. I hadn't talked to him in a long time when he took his own life. And wow, I've done healing for over 20 years on my nervous system. I have done every kind of alternative treatment for healing complex PTSD, to every kind of Western treatment. And to feel the way it just kind of knocked the wind out of me. And, I felt like, who am I to be a therapist to people? Like, who am I to be supporting anyone if I am this ripped apart? I thought I had known what it was like to experience incredible suffering. And until I had lost him in that way, I was not experiencing the depth of suffering that I had until I lost him. It was awful. And I really wished that I had, immense resilience when that happened. And I had cultivated some, and I'm so grateful that I was aware of trauma treatment and somatic trauma treatment, and that I had some resources about me and a bit of a network of friends. But, I wish I would have had the infinite amount of revolutionary love and resilience available, because I beat the shit out of myself for 2 years, just blaming myself. And if I had had the kind of revolutionary love that I have now, just 3 years later, I think I would have spent a lot less time in that place where I was just sure that somehow it was my fault, and a lot more time resting into the support of the people who love me and allowing myself to grieve without all of that noise in my head. So that is one place that I felt like I could have used it. However, in the end, it drove me to finding it way more than I ever had.
Wow, I'm just really sitting with the tenderness of that story and just noticing in my own body, just a real feeling of tenderness for past you that needed so much more than she had, and also how that really led you to this path to really cultivate it to where you are now.
Yeah, I can feel the tenderness too as I share, and that is something that I can let myself feel these days, is just the tenderness, instead of being ripped open or so collapsed we couldn't be speaking. And I'm just so grateful that I get to feel this without, shutting it away or becoming too overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, I'm curious about some of the ways that you did end up finding some resilience and finding your path towards resilience and towards revolutionary love relating to the story of your father's passing. Just, a little bit about that would be really useful for some people, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's such a good question. I was seeing an incredible therapist at that time, someone who spoke a similar language as me, a somatic transpersonal psychotherapist who was quite alternative. And I could really feel that he genuinely loved me, like that he could hold like the depth of my rage, my pain, my fear, my tears, and that I was still lovable. I was walking through the world with this story that I was too sensitive, and that all of everything that I always felt was a burden for everyone, including a lot of the therapists that I saw. So many of them just didn't know what to do with me. That was the story I told myself and then would run. But with him, we had somehow created a bond where I could allow myself to be torn apart, and he wouldn't go away. He wouldn't pull his energy away. He wouldn't try to come forward and save me. And he just kept reflecting back to me how much this mattered, all of the emotions that I was feeling, and that it didn't need to hurry up, and we were always exactly where we needed to be. And, I often felt like I'm too dramatic or not healing fast enough. And he just kept reflecting back to me that what I'm looking for is right here in the present moment. And he started helping me see that amidst the pain is also pleasure. Amidst being torn open, there can also be incredible joy. And so instead of living in that world of duality of I can't feel this because I want to feel this, He really helped through like deep somatic meditations, through just the ways we would slow down our conversations to get really present together. He taught me how to feel into my body, that I had the capacity for everything that I was looking for. So instead of just talking about it all, he just helped me feel with, and he felt with me. And it was such a gift. I feel so privileged to have had that connection. And then I also unplugged. I took a lot of time off. I actually moved out of my house. I moved across the world. And while I was doing some work, I was only doing the work that really, really inspired me, that I felt supported by. And what inspired me was to just move and live like a free spirit in Bali, Indonesia. And I did that for a couple of years. And I think that living in Asia was the biggest thing that I could have attributed to increasing my resilience. Because while everyone thinks I'm sitting on a tropical island, actually living in Bali is the most intense place I have ever lived in my life. And for a lot of reasons, it's really intense. But there was a way that I had to ground down into myself more fiercely than I ever had in my life, because I was alone, essentially, while traveling the world for those couple of years. And all I had was me right there in all of those moments, with all of those changes and all the transitions every time I moved. And as a highly sensitive person, there's so much there that's different than where I'm used to living. Everything is super loud. It's moving fast. The energy of the environment is really vibrant and fertile. So everything, I felt like I was just plugged into a light socket the entire time I was in Asia, but I was really devoted to being there. And so then I started working with another therapist that helped me learn how to modulate my nervous system in the most subtle levels in order to manage the overwhelm that I was feeling while feeling plugged into a light socket. And so both of those were epic in being able to find the resilience that I've been cultivating.
And I really like that that's a reflection of what you were saying earlier around you can't do this by yourself. You don't need to do it alone. It's through the reflections from others around us, the people we can trust to support us, that really helped you find that place of resilience and find that place of revolutionary love, so that you could go and plug into a light socket and be okay.
Yeah.
Even in the chaos of Asia. Yeah.
I used to have a lot of stories and shame about the amount of support that I really enjoy getting for myself. And I finally dropped it. You know, some people come to therapy and leave after 10 sessions and they've got everything they needed for a whole lifetime. For me, it has been the cornerstone, that is my anchor, and it has always been, whether I'm in coaching or therapy, pretty much weekly for a very long time. And I don't care anymore. That's like it inspires me. It fuels me. I feel connected. I learn about myself. I'm just such a nerd. And, I like it for my mind, and I like it for my heart and my emotional world. And that's what I want. I might not even need it, but I want it. And so I'm giving it to myself.
Yeah. I love that you finally dropped all the stories and you're just owning it. And I'm like, this is what I want and this is what I'm doing. Great. And I feel like that also is a big part of revolutionary love and resilience. It's giving yourself the things that you really want, really need, and being unapologetic about it, maybe. Just sort of, no, this is what I need and I deserve it and I'm doing it. Yeah,
that word unapologetic has been coming through the more the revolutionary love is becoming embodied, and I can feel it. There's so much support for not caring so much about how I imagine other people perceive me to be, whatever I'm doing or how I'm dressing or how I'm speaking or the work I'm putting in my world. Like the unapologeticness comes naturally through that revolutionary love.
And I'm really curious how this is beginning to show up in the work that you do. like how it's influencing what you do with your people and the work that you put in the world, and how it's influencing that.
I will share that with you, but I'm going to rewind for a few minutes and just say the second thing that I was going to say about a story from my life.
Please.
So I just wanted to share a little about, where I come from. And that's absolutely what inspires the work that I do. But the trauma that I carry is developmental trauma. It's called complex PTSD. It took probably 20 years, maybe 15 to diagnose that. I've had every other diagnosis in the book, either self-diagnosed or from a therapist, around, anxiety, depression, various forms of depression, various forms of anxiety, learning disabilities, borderline personality disorder, PTSD with features of borderline personality disorder. And then when I landed on complex PTSD and started learning about this experience, everything made sense. It was like, oh yeah, no, I do have learning challenges. That's why, and all those things, anxiety, depression. Yes, of course I have complex PTSD. How could I not have anxiety and depression given what I went through? And, when I was young, I could share a lot of stories about how, I wasn't able to thrive emotionally because I was not getting consistent emotional care or reflection from day one of being born. Went through a lot of experiences of abandonment, rejection with dad, had several stepfathers, and I think one of the biggest experiences out of all of the various traumas, which I'm sure we'll touch on throughout the years of the podcast, but was I had one stepfather who regularly terrorized me and just emotionally manipulated me. And I was constantly in a state of fright. Like I would sleep in my closet. I went mute. I was in such a state of collapse and freeze that I could barely function. I couldn't communicate what was going on because the threats were so intense. And when I did try to communicate them, it wasn't believed, as happens often with children who are deemed as difficult when they're emotional. And I was really in need of support. I was in need of someone to scoop me up and look at me and just say, I see you. I see that you seem terrified. You seem overwhelmed. You seem like you're not getting the accurate reflection and care emotionally that you need. And for a really long time, I told myself that it wasn't that bad because it wasn't physical violence. And it wasn't that bad because I grew up with money. I had enough. And there were so many other people in the world that were suffering more than me. And so on top of already being incredibly dysregulated, walking around overwhelmed, collapsed in tears every single day, like sobbing from the age of 13 until my late 20s, shaking constantly from fear and just like wanting to die on a regular basis from these experiences of just repeatedly being told like all of these mixed messages. I couldn't figure out what was safe, what was real. And so I internalized it. I thought I was wrong. I thought I was bad because it couldn't have possibly been the rest of the world or the people who were supposed to be taking care of me. And then I layered on top of that dysregulated nervous system that I shouldn't be feeling this way because other people suffer more and I should just get it together. And I lived with that kind of tension for so long that I think I ended up traumatizing myself more and more. I lived with such a state of unworthiness. I never expected I would live past the age of 26. And so I would repeatedly traumatize myself through proving to myself that I wasn't worthy, that I didn't deserve to live. I didn't deserve to have kind, respectful people in my life, through drugs and alcohol, through being in relationships with a lot of really non-present or kind people. And just as I'm sharing this, I just feel like the pain in my heart around trying to figure this out on my own for so long, starting at like age 11 was when the real intensity started in my life. And I tell this just because I think so many people do that to themselves, that where they have experienced growing up in a family with primary caregivers who can't reflect to them their lovability, that they're safe, that they've got a sense of belonging here, that they're believed, and offer support. And they end up just thinking it's themselves and traumatizing the heck out of themselves over and over again until they learn how to like validate their experience. And that is why I do what I do, so that I can really help people tap into that sense of love, sense of belonging, sense of safety, believe them, and help them be with themselves in a way that they had never had modeled for them.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing your story. That's really, again, I'm really moved and really feeling that tenderness and just the magnitude of being able to now support other people who also feel, oh, it must be me, or it's not that bad, or to validate where they're at, how they're, and just see them blossom and see them grow. And yeah, it's a hard road to get to where you are, but it's really, really beautiful and really tender and really feeling a lot of emotions myself now, having heard you share that. So thank you for being so raw and honest. It's really, yeah.
Thank you. It really feels good to be in this with you together.
Yeah. And then moving back to my other question around leading on from this, how does this background and all of these hard lessons that you've had to learn and the way that you've cultivated so much love and resilience in your own life, how does it now show up in the work that you do?
These days, it shows up more than anything in how I am with my clients and my students. There's this incredible commitment to presence, like that I only work with people that I can really, really care about. And I set up my schedule in the way that I have the ability to be present with people, that I have the energy for it. I don't overdo it, because I really want to be with people in a way that they genuinely can feel that they matter. And they do. They all matter to me. And through accurate somatic reflection, I use all the information I get in my body that I have cultivated through all of the practices I do to help them do that in their own bodies and reflect to them that, wow, they are telling me this incredibly painful story where there was a lot of disrepair or shame or sadness or fear, and just slowing down enough with them to feel it together, to go, wow, I am feeling such a depth of grief as you're talking about it. And I see you're talking really fast, and that feels incongruent to me. Like something feels a little like I want to catch people on it. And I want them to know that them taking up space to process this with me and to know that it matters and that we can feel it together in a particular way, little by little, where we're connected. And that is an act of revolutionary love of being able to be a witness to every single person's story, that I meet and walk in, whether they tell it to me from the present moment, because I would never ask anyone to tell me about their past unless it comes up from something that's happening in the present moment, because I don't need to re-traumatize someone or drag them through it. But whatever is coming up, it's like I tune into like, what is the most loving way we can be with this right now? What is the way that we can increase the resilience so that this person can learn how to hold this as it continues to come up in their life, or they can hold anything. And so it's just the frame from which I work. And I love it because instead of getting exhausted, I get energized these days. And it's so different than it used to be. And it feels way more meaningful. And I think people can feel it, that I am actually there because I care and it matters.
Yeah, I love that. It's like that every single person that comes in the door matters and their stories matter. And I'm really feeling that depth of care as you're speaking about it. It's really, I can feel how true that is. And it's a really grounding, solid, good feeling.
Yeah. And I just want to add that I work very strongly, whether I'm leading a retreat or a practice or working with my clients, I really love the lens of attachment. That's because that's where I came from. That's where the disrepair was in my life. But I'm constantly looking at, okay, how are the people who have trauma, because most people who come see me have trauma, most people have trauma. How are they relating to me, and how are they receiving me? What's happening between us? And how might that connect to how they learned how to do relationship in their developmental years? And that doesn't mean everybody is going to be relating to me in a way that needs healing or something, but I'm always just really, really curious about that.
Yeah, it's super, super fascinating. I can definitely relate to being really curious about that. And I'm also curious about, you mentioned just before, the practices that you do and all the practices that you've done to support yourself in developing more revolutionary love, more resilience. And so I'm wondering, is there a practice that you'd like to share with people to increase their own revolutionary love and resilience, to really start exploring that?
Put me on the spot. Yeah. There's so many. The first one that comes to mind is kind of in two parts, so I can guide us through it for a few minutes.
Yeah, I think that would be a lovely way to finish, to have this experience of what we've been talking about.
Okay. So I really like to start every single practice before we kind of go inside by taking some time to actually orient ourselves to the space that we're in, to just arrive again as though we're here with fresh eyes. And that means taking a look around. Use your whole head and neck. You can allow your eyes to drift through your space, whether you're inside or out, in a way that it's receiving everything that's there, the space, the objects. It's almost like these things could reach out and grab you. They're waving for your attention instead of kind of looking outwards, trying to go get those things. Allowing the eyes to be soft. Just notice the colors, the shadows, the light. And you can notice what happens inside as you are taking in your space through your eyes. You can see what happens to your breath. And then if you feel like going inside even more, you can allow your eyes to kind of rest a couple of feet in front of you, or you can allow your eyes to close, whatever feels most comfortable, or however you feel like you can connect inward most easily. And if it feels okay to you, you can allow a hand to rest on the heart and a hand on the belly, or one or the other. And if you'd rather have your hands resting somewhere else, that's just fine. Wherever you are, begin to tune into the way the breath helps the core of the body expand with the inhale. And then just kind of melt on the exhale. Allow your breath to be gentle and soft. No need to breathe any particular way. And you can notice the pressure between your hands and your body if they're there. You can notice wherever your hands are resting and what they're in contact with. You can feel the temperature of your hands. And the temperature of your body. And you might notice there are some emotions here or thoughts, and see if it's possible to simply allow them. No need to try to make them different or figure them out or fix them. See if there's space for them here. They can come and go as they please. And for the next 3 to 5 exhales, you can see if it's possible to soften any places in your body that may feel tight or tense. Simply inviting them to soften. No need if they don't want to. And then I like to imagine that these are the hands of a wise being or compassionate grandmother. You can get creative and imagine a kind paw of a pet you love or a tree. Let your imagination get creative. And then I take some time to feel the hands here on my body or just feel the breath. You can imagine a few words that this kind, compassionate being might say to you. And speak that to yourself silently, or you can use mine. Mine sound like, I'm here with you. I see you. You are welcome however you are. And take a few more breaths. Allow those words to land. When you feel ready, you can allow the light to come to your eyes a bit. You can stabilize this feeling as you begin to let more and more light in as you look around your space. And you can hang out with this as long as you like in your own practice. And when it feels complete, you can move on to the next thing.
Thank you. I feel a lot softer and a sort of real feeling of gentle calmness. And I really
Me too.
Yeah, awesome. I really like that my compassionate being was a hedgehog, and I don't understand why, because I don't think I've ever seen a hedgehog in my life. We have echidnas in Australia, not hedgehogs. But it was amazing, and so I think I'll go back and visit her again.
That is awesome. I wonder how big little hedgehog's hands are.
I'm not sure. She seemed to have like person-sized hands. This hedgehog, anyway.
That's just perfect.
Space and time. Thank you. Is there anything that you'd like to say in closing as we say farewell? And I thank you for being on your podcast.
Just a thank you to everyone who has stayed with us this long, and for anyone who is here listening that is receiving this information. Thank you for your presence.
Yeah, and thank you, Shelby, for being here and doing what you do in the world and being so committed to learning and growing and to revolutionary love and resilience.
Thank you so much for being part of this show and being part of this love revolution. If you love this podcast, please share it with your people and leave a 5-star review so that we can get the word out. If you're a practitioner or on your own healing journey, head on over and check out creatingsaferspace.com, which is one of my passion projects and is open for enrollment now. You'll get access to it the moment you sign up. Or join my mailing list for all sorts of revolutionary love and trauma-aware support at shelby-leigh.com. See you next episode.